Right. So maybe it might be a good time to get started. So happy STEM Expo Week, everybody. I hope you're just excited as I am for all of the exciting things we have going on. And good luck to all of you that are competing at the national tournament this weekend. And hello to every Science Olympiad person out there too. We're really excited to see everybody here. So as a quick introduction, my name is Jolly Patro. I'm currently a junior in chemistry here at Caltech, but I'm also the 2022 National Tournament Co-Director. And it is my pleasure to bring to you that Caltech is co-hosting this tournament with National Science Olympiad this year. So we thought what might be a better way to start off this tournament week by giving you an introduction to Caltech. And it's a place that's near and dear to my heart. And so hopefully one day we'll see you on campus as well. But thanks, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. My name is Tessa Tweet, and I am really excited to welcome you all virtually to Caltech. I want to, first of all, start off by acknowledging that our campus is located on the historic lands of the Tongva people in Pasadena, California. I also want to go over a little bit of a schedule for today so you know what to expect. A couple reminders. I've already said this, but I'll say it again. Please submit any questions you have into the chat or into the Q&A, not the chat. The chat will be disabled. You can chat with hosts or panelists if there's any issues there. But if you have questions that you'd like answered live or questions that perhaps some of our panelists might answer via text, those should all go in the Q&A box. So answer questions. We'll have lots of time for Q&A once we switch this over to our student panel after I do a quick info session to kind of give you a bird's eye view of Caltech and specifically the undergraduate life of Caltech. So once we do that, we will spend about 45 minutes hearing from our students. So I want to introduce myself. I'm Tessa Tweet. I've said that already. I am Assistant Director of Undergraduate Admissions here in the Undergraduate Admissions Office. And I am just so excited to have all of you here today. I know that you all are the kind of students that come to Caltech and make it such a great place. Caltech scientists and engineers are innovators. These talented individuals who spend their career here choose Caltech because the Institute is known for solving some of the most difficult problems, often through strategies that have never been tried before. Individuals at Caltech work under conditions that can even lead to the creation of new disciplines as they advance their research goals. So if this sounds up your alley, you might be in the right place. So curiosity is what put curiosity and perseverance on Mars. Much of what you learn in STEM classes today can be traced in some way back to Caltech, from Millikan's oil drop experiment to the theory of quantum electrodynamics to why Pluto is now a dwarf planet. You can think of scientists like Richard Feynman, Roger Sperry, to more contemporary figures like Francis Arnold, who is a recent Nobel laureate and pioneered the directed evolution of enzymes, to Katie Bowman, who was instrumental in writing the algorithm that photographed a black hole for the first time. These are people who are on our campus today. Caltech is also a playground for scientists. So all of our students have access and opportunities to conduct research with professors and researchers on campus who create novel procedures and devices, who discover new life, who discover new planets, and answer questions that often have not even been asked before. So in this slide, you see students working in the Jim Hall prototyping lab at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, who you're going to hear that referred to as JPL. Caltech is the only university that co-runs a NASA branch. In wet labs doing primary research. And a lot of this research is done through surf, right? You might hear students talk about going surfing in the summer. If students on campus over the summer are surfing, they are doing summer undergraduate research fellowships. This is a signature program that allows the majority of students on campus to participate in research. In fact, almost 90% of students participate in some form of research during their time at Caltech. We make this very easy for students to do right from the get-go. We're also all about collaboration. And as you all know, as young scientists, that science is all about collaboration. We have a 3-to-1 student to faculty ratio and access to innovative faculty. So think back to Frances Arnold, Nobel laureate. Frances Arnold has and will continue to have undergraduate students working in her lab. This is something, that's really not something that you can find in almost any other institution. Students have access to these innovative faculty. Faculty teach all classes from the first term 200-person core courses to those seminars in your specific major with only 5 other students and everything in between. Students declare a major, or as you are going to hear, an option, it's what we call them at Caltech, towards the end of their first year of study, after having taken core courses and pizza courses, which are a great way for students to have lunch and hear from a rotating schedule of different researchers to kind of get a better sense of what kind of research is happening on campus. And also after talking about options with their first year advisor. So it's really important to know students come into Caltech undeclared, because we know that, well, you might know that you love math. You might not know that you love geophysics, right? Things that maybe you didn't have access to in high school. Caltech is an intimately sized residential research community, and our approach to teaching and learning really reflects that. We're also interdisciplinary. So you can see now the core curriculum. This interdisciplinary approach to STEM involves our core curriculum, which is, I'm going to say it again, STEM, but it's also humanities and social science based, right? We really want students who think interdisciplinary. So you'll notice that there are 12 required terms of humanities and social science credits, and 3 terms a year, 4 years, students are going to be taking a humanities or social science class on average once per term. It's really important that we develop scientists who are going to go out into the world as well-rounded thinkers and individuals. We also really encourage collaboration, right? So scientists in the wild work together. Science is not done in a vacuum. And the science that you'll do at Caltech, starting out with those problem sets that you get in your core curriculum math courses at the very start to your first year, those are intended to be done and figured out collaboratively. That is how science is done. And it's also all about creating community through that collaboration. So you'll just know that if you come to Caltech, you are going to be studying fields beyond your option and learning how to apply principles in one class, learned in one class, to work in another. Techers are fearless. So this is Jessica Watkins, who you might all recognize, who worked on the Mars Curiosity rover while at Caltech and made history as the first Black woman on the International Space Station. When Watkins was selected for the 2017 astronaut class, she had just spent 2 years working at Caltech on the Mars Science Laboratory mission's Curiosity rover. And while at Caltech, she was also assistant coach of the women's basketball team. Caltech is a small world where everybody is part of a tight-knit community. And techers are fearless even when strapping a rocket to their backs. Caltech is also a residential community. Our techers are creative, our students live, learn, collaborate, and have downtime on campus. Caltech requires students live on campus for their first 2 years. And after that, many students choose to live on campus, to continue living on campus after that. We also have a myriad of clubs depending on, student interest. So, if you're interested in robotics, or maybe you're interested in cheese and you want to join the cheese club, it's really easy to start a club and foster your unique interests. We also have musical opportunities from orchestra to concert band to jazz band to choral groups to, of course, a college campus wouldn't be the same without a cappella. We have 16 NCAA Division III teams in club sports and intramurals, so there's lots of ways to stay active. You might have noticed that there was a physical education requirement in that interdisciplinary slide a few slides back. We also have theater and art opportunities really to engage that creativity, outside of the lab and something a little bit different than the sciences. All of these skills are used in traditions like Ditch Day and Interhouse. I bet our students are going to talk a little bit about Interhouse when we have our panel in a bit. And, Caltech is it's all about community. So I want to talk a little bit about applying to Caltech quickly, because I know that some of you might be juniors who are rising seniors, or maybe you are interested in applying to Caltech in a few years. And I want to give you a little bit of insight into what that's going to look like. Caltech uses the common application or the coalition application. We have no preference. You're going to give us the same information no matter what. We're also a QuestBridge partner if you choose to apply through that route. We do have an application fee, but we also have a fee waiver, which is by request. So I'd encourage you to talk to your high school counselor if you think that's something that would be helpful in your case. Right now, the only standardized tests that we require are the TOEFL IBT or the Duolingo English test. These are both for students who are international students and who have not taken coursework in English. Other than that, we have a moratorium on ACT and SAT tests right now to reflect the difficulty that students have had over the past few years during the pandemic to take those standardized tests. So we do not require SAT or ACT for students applying for entry into the fall of 2023. So that is our rising seniors who are submitting their applications in November of 2022 or submitting their applications in January of 2023. We will not require SAT or ACT. Now, this moratorium is currently a 3-year moratorium. So if you are a rising junior or a rising sophomore, you'll have to check back later and see whether, what our policy for the SAT will be. And another thing to note, we do not require SAT subject tests anymore. And then a couple other things. Teacher evaluations. We do require a math or science teacher evaluation. That one probably makes a lot of sense to you. One thing students might often forget is that we require a humanities or social science teacher recommendation as well. So that evaluation needs to be from a humanities course that has a writing component. So that is something to keep in mind and a reason to make good connections with teachers in your school. We require a secondary school report. This is something that your counselor will put together. We require academic transcripts, especially if you might have taken coursework beyond just your high school. That's really important to get to us. And then optional materials. These are not required at all, but if you apply to Caltech and submit an application, you will receive an invitation to join your Caltech application portal. And when you log on there, you'll have the opportunity to submit any additional materials like research papers. Sometimes students submit maker portfolios, things like that. Again, this is not required, and this is not something the majority of students submit. But if it's something that you're interested in doing, you'll submit that after you submit your application, once you receive an invitation into the portal. Okay, that was a lot of talking from me. That was Caltech, the undergraduate application process, and the undergraduate experience in a nutshell. But I bet you have a lot of questions. So I'm going to suggest that you put any questions in the Q&A box. I'm going to go ahead and answer questions that are admissions related, and then our students are going to go ahead and answer questions that are student life related, and I have some questions prepared as well. And then I've just put our website where, you all are researchers at heart. So go ahead and use our website to find out more about Caltech, and anything that you still have a question, you still need an answer for, go ahead and go to ugadmissions@caltech.edu. Okay, I am going to stop sharing. I'm going to ask my panelists if they can turn their cameras on. Great. Awesome. So before we get started, I'd like you all to just quickly introduce yourself, and then we'll go ahead and get started with questions. And let's start with Diego.
Hello, everybody. I'm Diego. I am a current senior. I'll be heading off to grad school at the end of this year. I study physics with a particular focus in optics and laser physics. And I'll be working on applications of laser physics in the medical field during my PhD. Happy to answer your questions.
I can go next. Hi, I'm Isabel. I'm a current junior here at Caltech. Just like Jolly, I'm a chemistry major. I'm a member of Page House on campus. I do research with the Stoltz Lab, which is a synthetic chemistry research lab where I'm working on a total synthesis. I also do Dean's tutoring, which I'm sure there might be questions about. I do teaching, like TAing, so teaching assistant for a number of the classes here on campus. And in my free time, I also like to dance with a local ballet company. So if you have any questions about any of that, feel free to ask them in the chat.
I can go next. Hi, everyone. I'm Isha. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a junior here at Caltech, and I'm a computer science major, and I'm minoring in information and data science. I've been doing research with the Proctor Lab since my first year here. It's a computational biology lab. So I build like genetics tools and stuff. It's pretty cool. Aside from that, I also TA, or I'm a teaching assistant for a few of the undergraduate computer science classes here. And I also Dean's tutor. And in my free time, I've been trying to make my way through the New York Times bestseller list and explore more parts of LA.
I can go next. I'm Shub. Hello, everyone. I use he, him pronouns. I'm originally from Lucknow, India. So if you have any questions about the international experience or just like moving to California from a very different place, I can answer those. I'm studying physics with minors in CS and astrophysics. And I'm going off to grad school to pursue observational cosmology projects. So if you have any questions about that, on campus, I've been mostly involved in student government. And yeah, happy to be here.
Awesome, and that's me last. I'm Jeffrey. I'm a senior of fourth year studying computer science and BEM, which is like our business finance major, as well as the data science minor. On campus, my interests in CS research are super interdisciplinary, as is CS at Caltech. A lot of my recent work focused on taking stuff from economics and game theory and using it to shape more robust like machine learning algorithms. Off campus, I also really enjoyed it in working in industry, like taking what I've like learned in the classroom to kind of explore that other avenue. And in terms of Caltech student life, I served as Fleming House, one of the 8 undergraduate houses here, on their executive committee or their student government, as well as the inter-house athletics committee chair. And so if you have any questions about CS research, CS industry, or just like about student life at Caltech, definitely happy to answer.
Okay, we got everyone, right? Quickly, we have a couple of prepared questions, and I'm curious What made you all interested? And we don't need to hear from everyone since it's probably going to take a while to get through that. But what made you interested in going into STEM or going to a STEM specific college?
I have a fun little story. My father is a solid state physicist, so physics kind of runs in the family. When I was 5 years old, he was doing a postdoc at Rutgers University, and after school, he would take us to his giant cement brick of a laboratory and show my brother and I liquid nitrogen, and specifically what liquid nitrogen did to thin, flimsy rubber things. And the warehouse also had a laser laboratory and a clean room in there, but that was like my first immediate exposure to physics, and that was a lot of fun. And so kind of growing up with a physicist dad in the house meant that I kind of got to see all the cool sides of his job, but I also understood the frustrating parts of his job, and I still thought that that would be something that I would like to do. So I oriented myself towards STEM, and here I am.
And then you wanted to come to a campus where people play with liquid nitrogen all the time.
I mean, lasers ended up catching my fancy, but yeah, sure. Cryogens are neat.
Anyone else have kind of their inspiration for what made them decide to come to a STEM school and what made them get interested in STEM originally?
I'm someone who's pretty split on the humanities and STEM. I still am. Like, I haven't really given that up since I got here. But when I was a freshman in high school, I remember that a lot of my friends were kind of making their first decisions about like what they were going to do for the rest of high school and like picking their classes based on that. And I had just moved to California, so I stumbled into a club meeting purely on accident because I found the wrong classroom. And they were like, it was like a club for like building apps, and I knew nothing about that. But so I like signed on to like write their report essentially and do like the lazy, like the grunt work of the group because I had nothing else to do. And our coder quit within the first week. So then somehow I ended up becoming the person to do that. And it actually ended up being like such a lucky accident because I ended up loving it. And then I was like, maybe I should do this for the rest of my life. And I ended up kind of stumbling into it. And it was really exciting to see kind of a space where it's just all people who identify as women kind of in this tech space. And I'm hoping that I can keep doing that in the future. And so far I'm here for that. Hopefully I'll stick around.
Awesome. So I'm curious, what drew you all specifically to Caltech? There's lots of places that you can do CS or physics, but why Caltech for you?
So I guess I can start it off. I'm originally from like the Caltech area. So I really thought when I was applying to schools, I was like, I am going to get so far away from Pasadena, which is where Caltech is, and also where I grew up and went to preschool, went to elementary school and went through all of that. And I would tell people like the closest I'm going to be to Pasadena is San Francisco. Like I will go to Berkeley and that is the closest I will be. I will not be within a 5-mile radius or like a 50-mile radius of where I grew up. But still, like, regardless of that like rule that I'd given myself, when I was looking at schools, I just couldn't like not apply to Caltech. The availability of just research opportunities, like the level of classes, just everything in terms of like the amount of opportunities that you have here. What I've always, how I always explain it is it's really hard to get in and it's really competitive when you're applying, but once you're in, it's really, really collaborative and everyone's supporting each other and everyone's trying to like make sure that everyone else is doing well. You're not just like making sure yourself is doing well at the cost of others, but it's a really helpful community, both like among the students, we all collaborate really well, but also the professors are really, really helpful. And I thought that community with the caliber of education, as well as the like opportunity to do research. Again, I'm a chemistry major, so research is very valuable in my major. So the ability to get involved as early as I could, which I was able to join a lab like my freshman year, right off the bat. So that was really something that like made me consider maybe staying within 20-minute drive from my house.
Anyone else have anything specific that drew them to Caltech?
Yeah, for sure. I think Isabel talked a little bit about the collaborative culture here. But I think in that sense, like another point to touch on is I really enjoyed how small and tight knit Caltech seemed to be. I think there's like a lot of ways to look at like the sides of Caltech. I think a big part is like academically. I know admissions like has on the website like the I think 1-to-3 student faculty ratio. For CS I remember is like 1-to-5. But like that's something you don't really appreciate until you come here and you're able to take class directly with professors, show up to office hours and have professors know you by name. And like that's something that's like really underappreciated that I like coming now as a senior. Like I'm realizing that this is something I mildly took for granted in my first couple of years. And so that's on the academic side. It makes it really easy to get research and stuff like that, to like work with profs you want to work with and so on. On the social side, it's also really sick because we have this thing called the house system. And so it kind of allows you to develop more intimate, like more personal bonds with like the people in your house, people who have like a shared culture that you kind of like are interested in. We probably will run into this question later, but basically we have like this entire process called rotation, which is like the entire process to sort you into a house that kind of you would enjoy living in, that has people that you would enjoy like working with and just going to events with and doing stuff with. And so like in that sense, I really appreciated Caltech's size compared to my other options. And it was definitely like a big reason why I decided to come here.
Great. So I'm going to ask you all to think back to when you were applying for colleges. Do you have any tips for high school students applying to colleges? I can give, tips like read your papers out loud and ask someone to look for spelling mistakes. But do you have any more general advice for high school students?
I think the two pieces of advice from what I learned is first, keep like a Google Drive or like a Google Sheet of like all your information and all your deadlines and everything like that. You'd be surprised by how much information you kind of have to deal with at once. And you'll be putting in like the number of classes you took and the grades you got in them like a million times. It's easier if you just have it somewhere where you can kind of copy and paste as you need. That's kind of more on like the clerical side. I'm sure you'll do that on your own anyways, but it's just helpful to have a reminder. But the second thing is I would actually really look into the school and where it is and kind of the different opportunities that you have, because while academics is super, super important and programs are really important, it's also important to see like how you spend your time there, what kind of a support system you'll have, what kind of area you'll be in, and just like looking out for like the safety of the area and stuff like that, which Caltech is all super great at. But for other schools you also look at, I would definitely consider those, because that's just as important, because you'll be living there for the next 4 years. It's not just the school you go to from 9 to 5.
I guess sort of just to add on, also when you're actually writing the applications, I found that the easiest essays to write were the ones about myself or like things that I actually enjoyed. And I think they also turned out the best. So like generally not trying to tailor your essay towards what you think the school wants to hear, and really just making sure that you're proud of what you're writing and that you're writing about something that you're happy to write about and you enjoy writing about, will make your essay more enjoyable to write and also maybe for other people to read. So that's also my tip.
Yeah, I second that. It's more fun for me to read applications where the student is talking about something that they love and not something that they think that I love, because, you don't know who's going to read your essay. All you know is that they are probably rooting for you and want to hear the most about what you're passionate about. I want to take some time to answer some of Diego, go.
I have one very quick thing. Don't wait. Start early. You'll thank yourself later.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. So especially thinking about Caltech in specific. So one thing to remember about Caltech is that we don't have interviews. So some schools you might go in and do an interview, things like that. Caltech, we don't have the capacity. We have a really high volume of applications. And so think about those essay questions that you're writing specifically for Caltech as your way to speak directly to an admissions officer at Caltech. I think a lot of times people really prioritize those essay questions that come from the Common Application or the Coalition app, and they're general essays that go to every single school. And those are great. And they usually tell me a lot about yourself as a person. But the questions that come specifically from Caltech are really where you get to speak directly to us and think about what are the values of this institution and how can I reflect those in that essay. So a question for you all, what was the hardest part of your first year at Caltech? and how did you deal with it?
I feel like just generally coming into college, it's a much more like independent time for you, because like it's not like you're in school from a set time to a set time, you go home, and like your life is more organized as you want it to be. You can decide to go to lecture or not go to lecture. You can decide to work at midnight. You can decide to do whatever you want. And that sort of freedom is very refreshing, but it's also like really tough to get used to. Like you have to manage your own time, you have to keep track of deadlines, and that was probably the toughest part for me, especially at a place where you sort of have to like keep working constantly for 10 weeks and like it all goes like really fast. um so yeah, like Caltech does help a lot in that. Like you would probably hear this from like several people as you keep talking to people about Caltech, but the first 2 terms at Caltech are on pass fail, which means whatever you do in your classes doesn't really matter as long as you pass them, because your grades will only be known to you and no one else. Um, which is really nice because you can barely pass a class, or you can just take a chill time if you just want to like hang out with people or party all the time, because I mean it's your first year in college, right? um and it that plus just the house system generally, where you sort of live near upperclassmen who last year or 2 years ago went through exactly the same thing you're going through, that sort of like helped me get into a practice and be ready by the time my sophomore year started, with all the resources I needed to have an organized life. Yeah.
The social adjustment was probably hardest for me, if only because I was lucky and learned a lot of the time management and study practices that I ended up using here. So that wasn't as much of an adjustment. And I mean, the only way to go out of that for me was just through. You spend a while not having many friends, and then you go out, you meet people, and eventually settle into your new life. That was probably the most difficult for me, and not something that I initially expected when thinking about all of the various things that I was going to concern myself with my first few months at university. But it's definitely a real difficulty, and I bet that many people can empathize if you go through that. So like don't discount the social and personal challenges that a move brings with it, but know that it's something that's eminently manageable, and the university is structured such that you'll make friends as you go.
Yeah, for sure. I just want to reiterate what Shub said about kind of like the adjustment academically. I think one is like, again, reiterating pass fail is like a godsend for this kind of stuff where you're adjusting both socially and academically. Definitely the hardest thing for me was definitely, I think, learning how to learn, if that makes any sense. I think I am sure like you guys like participating in this tournament or in this science Olympiad, as well as like any like person who applies to Caltech and knows about Caltech is like already very academically gifted. But it's definitely like, even for me, like a huge adjustment coming to the classes here. One is like I came in very much wanting to study computer science. So my first year was definitely like a culture shift, whereas like I have to study biology, study chemistry. And like you think that like, oh, these subjects don't matter to me, so why should I learn them? But in actuality, like the entirety of freshman core is also structured to teach you like how to actually learn a subject, even when you don't really know it just yet, right? And so I think that was probably the biggest adjustment for me. But like the really good part is Caltech is super collaborative, and like all the freshmen are taking the same courses. So you do have people to work with and like very clear support systems to kind of like learn this at your own pace. So that was like my biggest adjustment.
Also, just collaborating with people is a great way to make friends, is what I've found. Like one of the easiest ways to make friends is to like be in the same classes as people and then just go up to them and say, hey, let's work on this afterwards. So like it sort of is a solution to both problems, is collaboration.
Yeah, and thinking about making friends and collaboration, another way that students make friends is through the house system. Can someone talk a little bit more about that? I know we've touched on it briefly, but if we can break it down for the audience.
Yeah, I can do that. So the house system is essentially, we have 8 houses on campus, and they all have very different personalities and traditions and kind of ways that they like to spend their free time. And each of these houses kind of has like, it's like their own little community, I'd say. And so people are able to become members of each of these houses. And it's not a very limiting experience at all. You're able to become a member as many houses as you would like, and as much as your time, I guess, can be spent over across all of these houses. But we've talked a little bit about rotation in the beginning, and it's essentially like a 2-week period where when you're in your first year, you come to Caltech and you get to go to all of these houses and go to their events. You meet everyone in the house and kind of get to see what it's like and what it would be like to live there. And all of these houses are mixed gender, mixed major, and mixed year, which means that you're living with upperclassmen who might be like a completely different major than you and a completely different like life or kind of path of life than you are. But it's exciting and it kind of gives you this inbuilt community. So I'm a member of Page House, and as a member of Page House, my house only has doubles. We're a North House, which means I have a roommate, and my house tends to like hold a lot of social events. We usually have stuff going on every night. I'm currently getting like 50 million group chats or texts about people fighting over the movie for tonight. So things are always going on, and all the houses can tell you a little bit about kind of what they like to do for fun. And I think the main thing that separates them is that we're all Caltech students first and foremost, but at the end of the day, we all have like different ways we like to spend our free time. And that's kind of what separates us the most and kind of like our quirky personality traditions and things. But I'm sure if you ask someone specifically about house traditions, they would love to tell you about the things they do with their house. So ask away, ask us fun questions.
Okay, here's a really good one. What is your favorite late night campus snack? And is there anything legendary, any legendary foods on campus or maybe around campus?
I was going to say on campus, bit of a stretch.
You know what? I
in
did
terms of
hear that there's
legend.
delicious Nutella toast at Broad Cafe that I didn't know about. So
That's true.
It's only for
well,
breakfast though, which
I
means you
find
have to
out-
be up before 10:30, which is sometimes a challenge, even for those of us who do have 9 a.m. classes.
Unless you stay up the entire night.
Pie and Burger is a local restaurant that is a very common name that'll come up when you ask, especially alumni. So what restaurants do you suggest? And it's like this locally owned place that serves very generous portions for very generous prices, which is, I think, why it was so appealing to university students. But as far as I know, the food is quite good. So
it's the best pie in Pasadena.
Specifically late night, as someone who does stay up till really late, Red Door is open from like 7 a.m. to 2 a.m., which is on campus and like included in your meal plan and everything. And they serve like decent coffee and really nice food, especially after like 10 p.m. Every night, where they start like a coffee house thing, like have taco bowls or like waffle sandwiches nowadays. Sometimes they have like mac and cheese or quesadillas and stuff like that. Beyond that, there's a closed like bagel / donut place called Winchell's, which is open 24/7 that I have several times just walked to at like 4 at the night and with friends, and it's been like pretty nice.
It's not a super late night snack, but another off-campus things, there's a bunch of boba places around campus, and a number of them give student discounts of like 15 or 20% off your order. So that's also like, I almost every single night at some point will walk to some boba place in the neighboring area and get boba. And I get 20% off every time. So it's somewhat economical. But that's another like favorite thing for students to do. It's very like I think every time I go and get boba, I either see students walking back from the different boba stores, or I run into students while I'm there. Like they're very, very common, like not super late nights because they close at like 10 or 11 p.m., but before midnight, nighttime sort of events that go on.
Yeah, and here's a little bit of a shout out to the admissions blog. If you just Google caltechadmissions.blog, I believe, just, you know, Google the Caltech admissions. There is a survey of all of the boba places within walking distance. That's one of the recent posts. Shari's wondering about tutoring. So a couple different types of academic support have come up. If you all can talk about academic support at Caltech.
Oh, I can.
Yeah, I
try out.
can. Oh,
Okay,
go ahead.
you go, Jeffrey.
Oh yeah, for sure. So there's like the way that I see, like I've experienced it mostly is that there's kind of like a tiering of academic support. So at the very foremost levels, you have what the like instructor office hours and maybe like teaching assistant office hours. And then sometimes like those are a little bit intimidating to go to, or they're like mega packed for certain like high enrollment courses. And so the dean's office offers this program called Dean's Tutoring, where like any student who's scored, I think it's a B or higher in a course, can sign up to tutor that class for the term. And so essentially you can get like personalized one-on-one help with another undergrad student who's taken the course before and like is capable of helping you. And it's like really helpful because one, it's like a really good way to meet upperclassmen and like kind of get to know your house better. I know like a lot of the houses, I think Fleming does this a ton, has like dean's tutoring like sessions and stuff in like our dining hall or stuff like that. And so it's like a great way to kind of like use your house community, like use your social and like house community to also like help you academically as well. I think that's the main tutoring for undergrad classes. I know there are also opportunities to tutor, but I'm not super familiar with those. I think the Caltech Y does some. There is like Rise tutoring as well. Maybe someone more familiar can explain.
The Caltech Y runs this thing called the RISE program, which is essentially Caltech students like undergrads can tutor, mostly volunteering, but you can also get paid if you are on a work study as part of your like financial aid. To tutor like high school students in science and math, and you can like choose what subjects and what hours or what days you're free, and like high school students come to like the cafeteria on campus and you tutor them. I don't know how they're doing it like in times of COVID, but at least that was like my freshman and sophomore year when I tutored. Another thing I wanted to say is like these are all like sort of like more formal ways of getting help, but also like for me at least, I just go to my friends or upperclassmen friends and ask them for help, and most people are able and willing to help. I personally feel the concepts of dean's tutor is you feel less guilty about asking people for their time because they're also getting paid for their time. So you're like, yeah, that's your job, but you can always ask people for help. And as a senior now, like I also help anyone who wants help in like their first year math classes or physics classes. And that's like the general temperament, like everyone sort of like wants to help each other because they also got help from someone else during their time.
Great. So quickly, I want to touch on a question from Jaden. Does Caltech offer summer programs for students in middle and high school? Jaden, I would recommend that you check out the Caltech Center for Teaching.
The Caltech Center for Teaching, Learning, and Outreach is what she was about to say before she froze.
It's ctlo.caltech.edu. Yeah.
Yep, that's where you probably find the information that you're looking for. Okay.
Maybe we can hop over to another question while we wait for Tessa to come back. But I think there was another question from Jenny in hearing how she's interested, how you guys chose Caltech over other universities and deciding what sealed that deal for Caltech. So maybe would anyone like to take that question?
I can start. So there's a couple different reasons for me, I'd say. I think one, I'm from Arizona and the Bay Area. So like this was kind of like right in the middle for me. So it was a good distance from home, I guess. So I was pretty happy about that. And also Pasadena is like perfect weather. Hi, Tessa. You're muted.
Thank you for holding down the fort while I was gone. Isha, I'm just gonna make you co-host just in case this happens again. Okay, I don't want to interrupt wherever you guys were at.
Oh, we were just talking about like why we chose Caltech. A few of us are just answering, but I guess I'll finish my answer. That like Pasadena is in such a sunny area. I really like the area a lot, but I think the thing that really sold it for me was just the house system. I think most of the schools I was applying to were all like 30,000 student plus, and then somehow I applied to Caltech, which is like the exact opposite of that. But now looking back, I like don't even know how I would survive at a school like that without knowing that like Jeff, when he wasn't even in term, I would text him and he would help me with CS38. He wasn't even like taking classes then, and I could still be able to do that. Or I could like message someone that I barely talked to because they lived in my house maybe 3 years before me and be like, hey, I need help getting a job. And like, I don't think I would feel comfortable doing that if I didn't have a support system like the house system already in place. And I think I'd have to look a lot harder to be able to get the same help. So I just appreciate how easy they make it to, you know, find the help that you need in various different forms and kind of just offer this like platter of resources and just let me kind of pick from it and decide what works best for me. And now that I'm looking back, I'm so glad that I like applied here on a whim. And like, even though it's so different than all my other choices, I think it was the obvious choice kind of given that too. But what do you guys think?
Caltech passed the vibe check. That was kind of what really sealed the deal for me, because I mean, like Tessa said earlier, we're not the only place that offers stellar academics and good research opportunities. But I visited and I thought, you know, I visited the places that I was deciding between, which is extremely helpful when making a decision. And I just kind of walked around, talked to people, and thought, where do I feel more comfortable spending the next 4 years of my life? And based on the interactions I had here and how open it felt and how friendly the students that I was talking to were, I said, oh, this seems like a good fit for me. I think I would be comfortable here. I would fit in well. My odd, quirky, occasionally overbearing, like tangents into random esoteric physics topics are less frowned upon, as it were. And people are happy to listen and speak to you about the weeds of their research in a way that I didn't find in other places. And I really liked that. So I decided to come here. And I mean, certainly don't regret it. It was a good choice for me.
I want to ask, there was a student who had their hand raised to ask a question. And I want to make sure if you'd like to raise your hand and ask that question that we get to you. So feel free to go ahead and raise your hand again. I'm curious, what is your favorite and least favorite part of Caltech?
I guess I can start off with this one. Pretty generic answer that I think we've heard a couple of times today, but I think one of my favorite things about Caltech is, again, just the people and the community, both the support from the other undergraduates as well as the support from the professors. The house system is really, really great and really incredible in terms of finding yourself a community, having events that, like, even though they're maybe not intentionally called like de-stress events, like it's nice to have social activities and events that aren't work, that are like actively available to you. You don't have to go out of your way to like find a group to go do laser tag with. Like Page House does midnight laser tag like once a year, and we go at midnight to a laser tag arena and play laser tag with the whole house. So if you want to do that, like the house does that, and you don't have to like find a group of people that's big enough to make it worth going. My least favorite thing is also something that I feel like I bring up a decent number of times, and all my friends always joke about it. But I think my least favorite thing is on weekends, the only food that's available is at Brown Cafe and Red Door, which obviously, I don't know how many of you guys have ever been to campus or seen, but I currently live in Bechtel Residence, which is like a 3 to 5 minute walk. It's really not that far. It's like your average walk at any other big school. But since we're a small campus, Bechtel to the dining halls that are open on the weekends is a very long walk. And I'm not a morning person, so I don't like waking up early and spending my time walking down just to get breakfast. And the reason I don't like this is because most of the other houses and residences live right next to the dining options that are open. So it's more of just the situation that I have found myself in living so far away from the food. But I just wish that there were more options open for dining on the weekends that are closer to where I live, because there are a number of like kitchens and like dining halls around Bechtel Residence. They just aren't open on the weekends. So that's my biggest qualm and complaint, I think.
A pretty good walking 5 minutes to get breakfast. That's a pretty good least favorite thing.
Life.
In my
We're
defense,
very
I do.
spoiled.
In
This
my
is not
defense-
alone what.
In my defense, I dance really, really early on the weekends. Like I have to be dancing at 10 in the morning and I have to eat before that and I have to drive there. So like waking up 10 to 15 minutes, which is like the round trip time.
Every
early
minute
to go
counts.
get food is really tough, like because I need the food. But yeah, that's just a me thing.
Yeah, for sure. I
Anyone
can try.
else?
Yeah, I can try answering this question as well. Yeah, in terms of favorite parts, I just really like the environment of people that are here. I think it's like really cool, especially something that I remember noticing like right after my freshman years, like everyone has taken like courses that would probably be like intermediate level, like biochem or whatnot at other schools. And so it's like really cool. You can be like declaring another major, but like you gotta talk about like you can connect on some level on whatever you're doing research on. And like someone that has some surface level of knowledge to like talk like intelligently with you and like kind of work it through you. And like even if you even with stuff in CS, I remember like going super deep. I've talked to my friends who are like in chemi or stuff like that, and they still like have pretty good grasp of it because that's just how a Caltech education is. And so then that part I like really appreciate like the academic curriculum here and it being more like breadth heavy in the beginning and then allowing you to specialize. I think it like helped me make sure that I really wanted to study CS because I got a chance to see all the other options as well. And I know for my friends, it's helped them figure out exactly what they want to study. And it like oftentimes it's very different from what they come in wanting to. The part that I'd say I probably don't like as much is probably something that you guys might already know. Caltech is a very academically rigorous experience. We also are on the quarter system. And so what that means is like, we have 3 quarters a year and usually 10 weeks of like pretty intense course loads. And so in that sense, during terms, it's usually hard to do things beyond like coursework, especially if you're taking like a very challenging major specific course. I've like taken terms where I like took one less class in because I wanted to like teach or something or like TA. And so I think finding that balance is something that I definitely hoped I could improve on and hope like Caltech could be better about. But it's like, I think to produce like a bunch of like really cool, really like rigorous scientists and like knowledgeable people, this is like one byproduct of it. So yeah.
Yeah, and for students who, are looking to maybe, lower their coursework load a little bit, there are lots of students who, if they're in athletics, they can, instead of taking PE, maybe they're on the athletic team. So that can reduce a requirement there. Students are also able to research for credit. So there's paid research, there's also volunteer research, but you can also research for credit. And that's a great way to get the hours that you put in the lab credit on your transcript.
Yeah, the addendum to my statement is that a lot of this was entirely self-imposed. So
This is frozen again.
Let's see. We have if anyone else has questions from the audience, go ahead and put those in the Q&A, or you're welcome to raise your hand and chat there. It looks like I've got, and then I have a couple more questions to ask before we wrap up. I think I want to just end on this one.
That's
I think
awkward.
maybe while we wait, okay, Tessa's back, so we're good.
You muted.
So sorry. Okay, I just want to have everybody really briefly say what makes Caltech a special place. And then I'm going to have Jolly wrap up and send us out. So panelists.
The way I've been telling just to pre-rush, it kind of feels like a graduate institute masquerading as an undergraduate institute. It's really small, really close-knit. You get to form all of these connections with professors, your peers, your like postdocs or something in your lab who are like really smart and intelligent people, and you get to learn a lot from them. It's an amazing experience for on that front for like 4 years, just being here and being able to like interact with like these really amazing people who you probably like will admire throughout your life.
I think it's just really remarkable that an institution puts a lot of faith into their students from their first day. Like I definitely shouldn't have access to my entire lab's code base my first day that I joined, but I did somehow. And I just think it's like a testament to how much Caltech is committed to their students.
Yeah, I was going to say the people and the attitude. Your professors will treat you like colleagues, but I mean, colleagues that they have to teach. There's an acknowledgement that you're there to learn, but there's also an acknowledgement that they don't have to talk down to you because you are perfectly capable of meeting them halfway and learning at the level that they are going to push you at. And that feels unique. And that's been a great environment to spend 4 years in. And it's been fantastic in preparation for going to graduate school.
Really, just to drive home Shub's point, as an example, like most of the majors we have here, and I mean, I agree with the point, so I don't have anything particularly new to bring up, but like within every major, especially within the chemistry major, we're required to take 5 graduate level classes, which is the same number of graduate level classes that the graduate students that are going to Caltech for chemistry are required to take, which means that when I'm graduating Caltech with an undergraduate degree, I have taken the same number of graduate level classes as the graduate students who eventually will get a PhD from Caltech are leaving with, which means that when I go to grad school, I will be really prepared because I have already taken Caltech level graduate school classes. And at least in chemistry, Caltech is one of the best grad schools out there. So like, I'm assuming that the education that I will find at any other institution in terms of graduate level classes is at least on par with the stuff that I have already taken and like had exposure to, which is just really incredible to get that exposure as early as your like sophomore year. Like, it's just wild.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely echoing all the points made before. I think the big takeaway that I had from Caltech is like I think you get a great deal of autonomy here, both like stuff with like socially, like academically, like profs respect you a ton, right? Like more so than I've seen from some of my friends at other schools. And I think that this like shows in ways like how easily you're able to get research and serves. And I think it echoes in like the way like the opportunities that Caltech students seek after graduation. Like we send a lot of people to graduate school, also like a very big job where you have like a lot of autonomy in like driving your thesis. A lot of my friends prefer like startups over big companies just because you get to have that same level of like responsibility and like activity as you did at Caltech. And so I'd say that's like what definitely makes Caltech very special in my eyes.
Thanks, everybody. And thank you again for spending your time telling everyone about Caltech and how to apply to Caltech and giving some advice on applying to college and especially into STEM. So this is really helpful to everyone that's out here watching. So thanks again for all of your time. I'd like to remind everybody, if you haven't yet, be sure to watch the National Office Minute. It's really cool. I watched it already too. But be sure to head over to the Science Olympiad YouTube channel and you'll get to enjoy it. But with that, so you can head over to the Science Olympiad YouTube channel and watch the remainder of the playlist for today if you haven't had a chance. But hopefully we'll see you again tomorrow and the rest of the week with our awesome programming. So thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.